This video is on speed, distance, time problems. And the reason why we're looking at speed, distance, time problems is we're currently studying rates. And the best example, or one of the easiest examples to understand of a rate is speed, because we sort of encounter it all the time when you're in your car and you see your speedometer, or you like to go for a bike ride. So speed's a really easy example to understand. And so what we're going to do in this video is look at how to find the distance you travel if you know your speed, or look at working out how to find how long it'll take you to travel a certain distance if you know the speed. So basically using your speed to calculate distance and time, and using your distance and time to calculate speed. So let's have a look at some examples. Hopefully some ideas about speed, distance and time will just be intuitive and fairly easy to understand. So here's an example where we give you a speed. And I've asked you, I think we'll have a look at this part of the question first, and then this part here. We've told you that you travel 24 kilometers per hour, and we've asked you to find the distance you travel in 3 hours. Well, really, I could just visually represent this as, that's the first hour, and there's the second hour, and there's the third hour. So every time an hour passes, you're going to travel 24 kilometers. So it makes sense that in 3 hours you will have travelled 3 lots of 24, and that distance is actually 72 kilometres. So in thinking about what we just did, well, to find the distance that you travelled, we took your speed and we actually multiplied it by the 3, that just represents a time. So we multiplied it by the time, and that is to find the distance. Now, if we want to work out the time to travel 6 kilometres, well, hopefully part of you would say, oh, well, 6 kilometres, that's actually just a quarter of the distance you travel in an hour. So if it's a quarter of the distance that you travel in an hour, it should take you a quarter of the time. And a quarter of 1 hour is just 15 minutes. But another way to get the 15 minutes would be to say, well, I want to travel 6 kilometres, and I can express that out of the speed, which is 24, and that gives me my 1/4 of an hour. So you can do it intuitively, where you say, okay, this quantity is a quarter of that, so I'll take a quarter of the time. But another way, if we look at this little triangle that we're building, is to say, well, if I want the time, then I can take the distance I'm travelling. Now in this question, the distance you were travelling is 6 kilometres, and I can divide it by this number here, which is the speed. So you may or may not have seen this triangle before, but this is a speed, distance, time triangle. And when it isn't intuitive to you, I guess, or it's not easy, if you can't see an easy way for how to make a calculation, the speed, distance, time triangle is really helpful. And it actually provides you with 3 different formulae or equations that you can use to find speed, distance, and time. So the first one we already looked at in this first question here, which is where if you want to find the distance, you can do the speed times the time. And then in part 2, we looked at the fact that if you want to find the time over here, you just do the distance divided by the speed. So we've got a formula for time, a formula for distance, we need one for the speed. So here we've got information telling me that we travel 108 kilometres, but we do that in 12 hours. So if I wanted to work out the speed, well, 108 kilometres per 12, without writing, 108 kilometres per 12 hours. If I want the speed is usually in kilometres per hour, so I would just have to divide both sides by 12 to get down to 1 hour, and that would give me 9 kilometres per hour. So my speed is 9 kilometres per hour. How did I get that? Well, what I ended up doing, if we look at our triangle, which will tell us as well what's going on, to get the speed, I could take my distance. Here's my distance of 108, and I would have to divide it by, that's what this bar here going across means, I would have to divide it by the time. And that's what we've done over here. We've divided it by the time of 12 hours to get my speed. So the speed, distance, time triangle, we're going to be using that in all of the problems that we're about to answer, and hopefully you find it helpful if you get stuck. All right, let's have a look. A taxi hurries with a constant speed of 84 kilometers per hour. How far, there's my question, how far, now is that referring to time, distance or speed? I think how far is clearly a measure of distance. So the distance, if I use my triangle, distance equals the speed times the time. And so my speed, well, my speed's 84 kilometers and my time is 5 hours. So then I can work out how far I travel. So I'll take my 84 times by 5, and that tells me that in 5 hours this taxi will travel 420 kilometers. Next question has us with a bus traveling at a constant speed of 48 kilometers per hour. How long will it take to travel 60 kilometers? How long is what we've been asked for. How long is time? Okay, last time in the last slide we calculated distance. Now we are going to calculate time. So time is equal to distance over speed. So I'll just write that out. Now the distance, well, we want to travel 60 kilometers. And the speed is 48 kilometers per hour. Now, when I get my time answer, because this is in kilometers per hour, it's clear that the answer I'm going to get will be in terms of hours. So if I divide the 60 by the 48, what it tells me is it's going to take me 1.25 hours. So it's going to take me over an hour to travel this 60 kilometers. And that answer is actually reasonable. It makes complete sense because every hour you're only traveling 48 kilometers, so you definitely can't do the 60 kilometers in less than an hour. And I know that in 2 hours, well, double 48, that would be 96. So in 2 hours, I'll have traveled more, more than the 60 kilometers. So I know my answer has to lie somewhere between 1 and 2 hours. And 60 kilometers isn't a lot more than 48 kilometers. So I expect it to be somewhere a little over 1 hour. But it's not even 1.5 hours later. So always check the reasonableness of your answer. All right, last example. This one's the hardest one. Not too bad, but you've got to really understand your concept of speed. And okay, so a plane travels 832 kilometers with a constant speed of 768 kilometers per hour. So it travels a certain distance at this speed, and then it travels a different distance, another distance at a different speed. Find how much time in total it takes to travel these distances and find the average speed by the plane. See, the average speed just means the overall speed for the whole journey. And because this plane travels at two different distances, we have to look at its entire journey to work out what its average speed is. So this question has 2 parts. Let's work out how much time does it take to travel these distances. Well, the time is equal to the distance traveled over the speed. But in this example, we've got 2 different journeys. So really, we've got the first distance traveled over the first speed, and then I'm going to do the second distance, or D2, traveled over the second speed. So the first distance it travels is 832 kilometers, and it does it with a speed of 768 kilometers per hour. The second distance it travels is 1,350, and the speed is 600 kilometers per hour. Now, because we're finding a time, if you look at the units in the speed, they're both per hour. So you know that whatever your answer is, it's going to be per hour. So let's just put this into our calculator, and it tells me that it's 3 1/3. Yeah, 3 1/3 hours. So it takes 3 hours, and 1/3 of an hour is 20 minutes. So 3 1/3 hours to travel these 2 distances. Now the next thing we get asked is to find the average speed traveled by the plane. So let's just see if we can fit it in here. Speed is equal to your distance traveled over time. Now in this question here, in order to work out the distance traveled over the time, well, the distance part's pretty easy. It travels 832 kilometers, and then it travels another 1,350 kilometers. And then the time taken, well, I just worked out that the whole journey takes 3 1/3 hours. So I can divide by 3 1/3. And then that's going to give me, now if you look at your units, these 2 numbers are in kilometers. So I can write my answer in kilometers. And this time is in hours. So it's going to be in kilometers per hour. So the 832, we'll put that into our calculator, plus the 1,350, that's 2,182. And then we're going to divide by 3 and a third. Let's find out what that is. So that gives me my speed as 6. Oh, just lost my screen. It's going to come back to me. Here we are, back again. Sorry, I'm not going to start again. That gives me 654.6 kilometers per hour. So there is my speed that I've been asked for the overall journey. And that seems reasonable because this speed is higher than my answer and this speed is lower than my answer. So it makes sense that my average speed would be somewhere in between those two values. Right, I hope this video makes sense. If it's unclear, shoot me an email, rewatch parts of the video and persist please, and just shoot me an email if you're confused.